Everyone, welcome to week 4 of our Thoughts on Thursday of the GrowthWorks Network. We're really excited to have another great speaker from the industry. One of the most asked about topics when we proposed this series was sustainability. What's going to be the role of the various strategic and tactical sustainability initiatives around the industry as we struggle for cash flows, struggle to bring back business in a world of social distancing and extreme hygiene. And can and will the industry play a significant role in its kind of global footprint, the way it looks after communities in the middle of a crisis and in the recovery. So we definitely wanted to pose that question to the community and have a really good discussion around it. We are incredibly lucky to have an industry leader who knows 100 times more about it than I do, constantly learning about this space. We've got Eva from the disruptive hospitality brand Selina, with, I'm sure she'll tell us more, but with kind of hotels, hostels, resorts around the world, really appealing to a younger demographic, but I think doing so in a really sustainable way, which she leads the charge on. So Eva, delighted to have you with us. Thanks for spending time. Over to you, really. Look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Great. Well, really happy to be here and see some familiar names, actually. And I live in California, just south of San Francisco. My role in the hospitality industry, I actually just worked my way through school as a server. And I always loved hospitality, but it was not what I went to school for at all. And I came back to it after being in the grocery industry, as well as in the nonprofit management industry and foundations. So I came back to it 3 years ago to join Selina. And I'm really happy to be with Selina. Selina is a really interesting brand. It really called to me for a number of reasons. And I'm going to pull up a deck. I'm going to talk a little bit about the company, my role with it, how my background has influenced our social impact and sustainability efforts. And I'm sure that we will continue to change over time. We're a fairly new company. So we were founded in 2015. And let me see here. Let's get started at the beginning. So we were founded in 2015. Our founders actually came from real estate, and they were living in Panama, saw opportunities around recreating the hostel space into something that was more inclusive for a variety of different categories of types of travelers. But what they really saw was an opportunity to drive a mission around authentic and meaningful connections with people and places and communities. And so that's really what all of our work is based off of, and in every single department. So we're always asking ourselves, is operations driving authentic, meaningful connections? Is design driving authentic, meaningful connections? And is our programming driving authentic, meaningful connections? Just a little bit about what we do. Yes, we provide rooms and beds, all different types. So we have dorms and we have private studios, all in the same property. All of our properties have co-works. We provide a lot of experience-based, meaningful connection opportunities through music, art, and then our programming around social impact and education. And the other basics that most other brands have, wellness, food, beverage, and some retail. So my department is thinking about social responsibility with communities around our relationships. Are they really authentic? What are they what kind of value are they creating for our guests, our staff, as well as for the local community? We do think about the standard ESG indicators in the industry. And as a new company, I will say that is a space that we are still standardizing. But we, from the beginning, if you ask Rafi, our CEO, he was on the beaches doing beach cleanups. And so really fostering this culture of giving back has always been part of our staff culture. And that's something that continues throughout all of our efforts today. So we have a 4-part strategy, which I guide. One is a commitment to reducing unemployment in the communities where we operate. So we have a job training program called Selina Gives Back. This is, in transition with the new normal. But we're really trying to create a thriving economy for all. Then we have programs that our clients can be in, our clients and guests can be involved with, our locals can be involved with. We partner with a lot. So we have over 500 local community organizations with which we partner, and that includes schools, government agencies, to really have programming that is most relative to the needs of the community. We have constant conversations with local stakeholders, and then, like I said, we really encourage our staff to give back to our communities, and the 2% of the time working with us, they will spend volunteering their time or skills, either in our program for job training or our impact programs. So there's a lot of ways that we could be creating impact. We try to be strategic and not just jump at any opportunity. So when I first started with the company a few years ago, we did a location-wide assessment with the communities to try and figure out what do people really need, which kind of global partnerships would we be looking for. I really, we are experts in our field, and for hospitality, our age group, kind of 30-year-olds is our average. We understand that space around nomadic lifestyles and co-working, but we are not experts in community work. And so I wanted, when I came to the company, just to be really clear that we need to be responding to the community as much as possible. So what we found is that almost in every single one of our communities, there are some challenges around ensuring that there's economic opportunity for everybody, not just for some. That the education that's being offered actually provides opportunities for success, and the implications of tourism on the environment and how we play a role in that. A little bit about what's happened in the last few years with the company. We have benefited people in our programs. Over 100,000 people have been a part of our impact programs, from beach cleanups to entrepreneur sessions in our spaces. And we've graduated over 500 people from our job training program with a employment rate of 70%. So it is kind of a funnel, not necessarily just to our business, but we do network with other businesses in the communities where we operate so that we can help job place those who go through the program. And while we have 75, well, in pre-COVID, we had 75 operating locations across the world, in Latin America, Europe, and a couple locations in the US. Out of those, about roughly 3/4 of the locations were engaged with impact programs. We've done, we definitely shifted as soon as March hit to try and think about how do we respond to the needs of our staff. So, we've done housing for medical staff. We have an emergency fund for staff who have been furloughed. In a lot of the countries in which we operate, there is no government support. So we really tried to support as many of the staff as we could. We are offering subsidized housing, kind of a work trade in a number of our locations. We've gone virtual with the hospitality job training program. So that's not up and running yet, but that's what we're working on now. And we're looking at our environmental management system, seeing, what does our footprint look like now, and how can we address that footprint in the future? So, when sustainability and tourism kind of started taking off in the late 90s, the definition was really about meeting the needs of our current generation without compromising the needs of future generations. So I feel like when I read this definition, I see a very status quo kind of thinking, like, let's just keep things not as bad. And for me, that doesn't really inspire transformation. And so I want to think about the space of sustainability as a space for creating a thriving future, not just a baseline business as usual future. So, right now the field kind of has, and there are other things that are not on this list, so I'm sure we can talk about those in our discussion. Everyone is trying to be as creative as possible, but these are kind of like the standards in our industry, right? We do our conservation measures around water and energy. Um, if if we can, we do some work around food prep and sourcing, and recycling, bath amenities, plastic use, etc. And these are very important measures. We shouldn't stop doing them. We know, Selina knows that our investors are very interested in sustainable models and that they will continue to support sustainable models into the future. And so we've continued to try and push on each of these kinds of initiatives. What do I want to say anymore here? Well, I think that just, the landscape continues to be not just about the environment, but it's also about, the economic scope in the locations and the social cultural sustainability. Are we being responsive or not? So what I want to see into the future and what I'm pushing for in Selina during this space, right? Crisis creates space for opportunity, is really thinking about a more regenerative model. So how can we create value and create a thriving environment in all those social, economic, and cultural spaces? So we're restoring any harm that we've done to our systems, and thinking about nature as an ecosystem, right? So how are we as a hospitality company part of a greater ecosystem, and trying to see those leverage points, so that we're really creating conditions that the whole community will flourish. So just as an example of what I'm working on right now for sustainability in the company is that we are revamping and trying to push for a much more sustainable food procurement policy. So what we see now, especially right in our remote locations, so we have remote locations and global city locations and everything kind of in between. But in our remote locations and kind of the in-between ones, we have a lot of access to local produce. When we commit to have a farmer relationship and sourcing from those local farmers, we're not just getting fresh foods. We are sustaining an ecosystem around sustainability, because that farmer is going to be able to feed his family, he's going to be able to send his kids to school, and we as a hospitality company can also leverage this beautiful space of agrotourism, right? And there's a number of other benefits. So I really see local food procurement as my main priority right now, when we know that, the World Health Organization is talking about food shortages and food insecurity around the world. I'm thinking about, okay, if that is the main driver of, or the main impact of poverty right now is food insecurity, that's huge. So how can we as a hospitality protect that space, ensure that our communities aren't suffering under food insecurity? Well, we know that F&B is still working to a certain extent, so let's leverage that space to foster some local food sovereignty, farms and people. And then we have a couple of other, when you look at food procurement, you have a couple of other things that right now are really interesting. One, you're not bringing in food from large distributors. And so that means that, you're reducing potential transmission of COVID. So that's something that can also be leveraged. If you want to commit to local food procurement, you say, look, we're not just protecting our customers, we're also protecting everyone in this community by reducing in and outs. And of course, the carbon footprint of trucking stuff in, back and forth, etc. The other two things that I put on this slide are things, well, the upcycling and recycling is part of our development and design model. So we are committed that a minimum of 60% of all of our design and room materials are upcycled and recycled. Our locations get redesigned, so we never build from scratch. This obviously helps reduce waste and our carbon footprint, but we work directly with local artisans on all of the elements and local pieces. So this, I see this as a space for regeneration as well. And then we feature those artisans and designers in our retail as well. And what I see, so next week, I'm having a number of conversations with global partners around volunteerism during this new normal. What does that look like? How do we integrate technology into some of the programs that we used to have? And how do we link global resource of, young people who want to make change in the world? A lot of college students wanting to do volunteerism still, but they can't travel. How do we link those people with the people at the local level who still need quality education, health resources, etc. So there is a growth space here as well. So I always like to have quotes around me. They change from time to time. This is a standard one that I can always come back to. If you think you're too small to make a difference, you've never tried to sleep in a room with a mosquito. My work is around looking at those leverage points. How do I think about Selina's sustainability as a holistic system? And we're just one part of a whole, of a greater whole. So with that, I think I would love to hear the thoughts of the group.
Fantastic, Eva. Thank you. I think that was a really thorough walkthrough of everything you're doing, and it's quite inspirational if you think about all those programs that you're setting out to deliver. And I think I've got a few takeaways. I think one is it's great to see you're known as being a disruptive brand anyway, but you're clearly bringing some disruption to this space too. I wonder how many traditional hotel chains can claim to have such robust programs, commitments, and be having such a big impact. Having 100,000 beneficiaries, I was like, that's a great number to have, and what a huge kind of reward for everything that you're doing. Although worryingly, of course, it's quite clear what a massive impact the crisis has had. Just all of those numbers just dropping off a cliff in 2020. And I wonder if, and we'll probably talk about it in a moment, if you're keeping sustainability and community at the core of your brand and your vision, I think you're trying to prove you can still have an impact even in a crisis. You probably need to change your path. And I love the way you're redoubling your efforts around having now this regenerative approach. But I imagine that's not without compromise and kind of impacts on cost and resourcing as well. And I guess my final point is, at one point you mentioned having supportive investors. Again, I wonder if that influences how much brands can do. Where does this sustainability agenda start? I think it probably has to start at the top, but that's not to say there's no hope, right? I think it's probably the job of management and professionals throughout the industry to start small, raising the point, campaigning to get the agenda set that other companies will need to do work like this to have a positive impact on tourism. But on behalf of the community, thanks so much. And that's a really thorough walkthrough. Plenty to think about as we think about sustainability in 2020. So thank you.
Yeah, James, about that final insight, I came from a philanthropic space. So previous to Selina, I was working with a large foundation here in California. And as someone who's a doer, I wasn't used to talking to people about like getting money to do things. I just wanted to go and do them. So I kind of had to like develop some communication skills around that. But what was really inspiring to me was that, in talking with investors and donors at the foundation, and over time, a lot of different stakeholders who hold the money bags, people they know the value of having a community that's healthy and sustainable, and they know that if your rivers are polluted, if your location is everywhere, maybe your location is beautiful but there's trash all around, if the community is generally suffering, you're not going to have strong tourism. You're really, it's a detriment to the business as well as to the community. And so I think that what I have found is people understand that. Where I have tried to push is, I had a coffee conversation one-on-one with one of our investors, and he was like, well, where do you think we can do better? I was so impressed that he was asking me that. And I was like, you know what, you need to ask for transparency in the nonprofit space, where we always have to give our numbers. And and I get that the private space is different. But if investors say, I want you to spend this much money on sustainability. This is the ROI that I want to see. Then we'll be able to do that. And it's not rocket science. The solutions are out there, and if we can just continue to press on that accountability, then we'll be able to do those kind of systemic changes that need to happen in the tourism industry. And I don't see it as being that far away. I really feel like this is a moment where investors are like, where is my ROI in general? And this is a crisis. If I'm going to continue to support you, I want to see that we're going to come out better from this, that we're not going to be doing the things that we were doing previously that were not sustainable, because those are the things that are floating to the top right now. Where if you had a water issue, that is one more reason why the business will not come back as strong, right? So that's what I'm seeing, and that's what I'm putting my focus on.
Really interesting.